we can't see you.
There you go. I'm
Thank you.
gone.
All right, Steve, you should be good, and we're good to start. Steve, if you want to. I can't hear you, Steve.
Do you have an echo on your end? I got one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unmute, Steve.
Steve, you're showing that you're still muted.
If you're on your phone, Steve, it's star 6 should unmute you. There you go.
Okay, Steve, we're looking to start the meeting with a roll call.
Sure. Mr. Schulman,
Here.
Mr. Johnson,
Rod's here.
Rod, you're muted.
we'll take that as a,
No, you're still, now you're still muted. Still muted. Well, why don't you raise your hand to indicate you're here and try and, all right, so Rod is here and try and work out the voice issues you've got.
okay, Mr. Rowena,
Here.
Mr. Goldstein,
Here.
Mr. Witherspoon,
Here.
Ms. Wells,
Galen, you're muted. Galen, can you, now you're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
okay, and I believe I've got everybody that's here. There's a few faces that popped in that are, I believe, on the applicant side.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I misspoke before. It was Frank who I had seen who now seems to have disappeared. All right. First item of business is public hearing 5-20 SP 204 Flax Hill LLC. And that's a proposed historic preservation development to rehabilitate existing historic structures and replace existing carriage house with 4 units. So whoever is representing 204 Flax Hill is welcome. Attorney Suchi, is that you?
Yes, Mr. Schulman, I think I may be having problems with video.
Yeah, I think you are, but we can hear you fine.
Okay, then I'm just going to probably turn video off so it doesn't come in and out, if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay. All right. There you go. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for meeting this evening. For the record, my name is Liz Suchi. I'm an attorney with Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy. We represent the owners and the applicant 204 Flax Hill LLC in connection with a special permit application for the property at 204 Flax Hill. It is District 2, Block 48, Lot 44. The property is in a D resident zone. You had seen this application once before at a very preliminary review session. And tonight, of course, is a public hearing on the special permit application that's been submitted in connection with various quote unquote exceedances that we need approval of to move forward with the proposal by 204 Flax Hill LLC. We notified neighbors of the submission of the application back on July 2nd. They've also been notified of tonight's public hearing by certified mail, return receipt requested, and the green cards received to date were delivered either last night or first thing this morning to the P&Z Dropbox, and hopefully Mr. Kleppen has those so they can be made part of the permanent public record. Present tonight, who will be making presentations beside myself, will be Chris DeAngelis, professional leader with Cabezas DeAngelis, Mark Hopper, the project architect of Cross Key Architects, and Tess Schwartz of Tessera. She is our project traffic engineer. As you've heard before, but we'll just remind you once again, the applicant is affiliated with Workforce Partners, and many of you may be familiar with some of their properties around Norwalk on Flax Hill Road, on North Main, West Avenue, on Elmcrest Terrace, on South Main Street. They are the owner or operator of workforce housing that is affordable to citizens earning 60 to 100% of the average area median income. And as we mentioned at our first meeting, Workforce buys, rejuvenates, modernizes, and makes efficient Class B or C housing, which is then offered at affordable rates. It bridges that gap for the much needed housing product in the Norwalk community. It creates communities that are healthy, safe, and environmentally friendly, and they're very proud of the products that they've brought to the market. And I'm sure if any of you have had the opportunity to drive around town, you've seen some of them. It's a very large IVE sign, identifies Workforce Partners and their projects. So back to the project, property at 204 Flax Hill. It currently has 4 structures on it and a resource of approximately 58 existing on-grade parking spaces. Building number 1, we call it the mansion. It was constructed around 1890. It has about 6 dwelling units, 7,500 square feet in size. It was the home of local coal, lumber, and mason supply merchant John Ferris, who was also a director of the City National Bank, a manager of Norwalk Savings Bank, and was a member of the House of Representatives and Senate in the late 1800s. That structure, which is prominent on the property when you drive into the property, is Queen Anne style and design. It originally had other component parts, architectural features, and part of the project before you this evening is to restore that property to very similar to what it looked like when it was constructed. So that's the Ferris House. And any changes to that structure are by virtue of exterior architectural changes, but it will remain 6 units, and many of the original features and component parts in the interior will all remain. The next building, which is attached to it, is called the Annex. That was constructed in the late 1960s. It has 7 dwelling units, and that will remain unchanged. The number of units will remain unchanged as well. At the rear of the property is what we call the garden. That was also constructed around late 1960s, and it has about 18 units. That building will remain unchanged, and the number of units will remain unchanged. The last structure on the property is what's called the carriage house. That too was constructed around 1900. It currently contains 4 units, and the proposal contemplates the demolition of that structure and in its place, the creation of a new building. The carriage house the demolition of the carriage house and changes to the Ferris House have been reviewed by the city's historical commission. They met July 22nd, and we're very pleased with the project proponent component parts with respect to the Ferris building, and expressed no issue with the demolition of the carriage house, which really doesn't resemble its architecture as it was from its construction in 1900. So the proposal before you in the special permit has 2 component parts. One is to renovate and rehabilitate the Ferris Mansion. It will stay 6 units. Adding to that structure will be a wraparound porch and a dome that will be similar to the dome that existed on the building when it was constructed. And as I just mentioned, the second component part is to demolish the carriage house and construct a new structure containing 14 units. So if all approvals are secured by you and any other agency that remains necessary, the site will increase in the number of units by 10, from 36 that exist today to 46 that would exist with the construction of the new house in place of the carriage house. All of the uses that are proposed, multifamily is permitted in the D-resident zone. And as I said earlier, the reason that this special permit is before you is because 4 component parts, 3 component parts do not meet the current requirements. And under your section 118 360B2Y, we are permitted to seek modifications or some flexibility from you for height and bulk requirements in the zoning regs. So the first exceedance deals with residential density. Required is 1,650 square feet per dwelling unit, and we're proposing 1,348. The second exceedance is the sum of the parking spaces that exist, which will remain do not meet the 8.5 by 19-foot dimension. They're slightly smaller, but they are existing. Then by virtue of the construction of the wraparound porch in front of the Ferris Mansion, some of those parking spaces will move further into the front setback. So we've asked for relief from that particular section of the code. And lastly, while the parking for the 46 units would require 60 parking spaces, on-site existing are 58. So there's a slight request for a slight differential in parking. Moreover, your section 118.360B2Y requires that in order for exceedances to be granted, the property must be a minimum 12,000 square feet, and this property clearly exceeds that. The structure must be listed on a local, state, or national historic inventory, and the Ferris Mansion, in fact, is listed on the City of Norwalk Historic Resource Inventory. The extent of the requirements to be exceeded must be clearly identified and documented. I believe we've done that sufficiently. And any special permit granted by the commission shall remain effective as long as the structure is preserved and maintained, and we fully intend to do that. At this point, if you would indulge me, I would like to have Chris DeAngelis of Cabezas DeAngelis come on the line and walk you through the site plan, walk you through the stormwater management plan that was proposed and modified, and then we'll move on from Chris to probably Mark Hopper. So at this point, if Chris is on, if he could step in, that would be great.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay, I hope?
We can.
Okay. I would like to have Mark Hopper bring up the plans. And I see he's done that. So I'm just going to walk you quickly through the site plan. And if you start on the left-hand side of the drawing, you will see a shaded area. And that is a new porch that is being constructed to the existing historic mansion. And there are no other changes to that existing building. That is part of our historic, that is being done so that we can receive some of the historic credits. Immediately behind that existing historic mansion is a building called the Annex Building. And there are no changes to that building. Yep, that's being, the hand is being waved over that right now. And all the way to the right-hand side of the sheet is an existing 3-story building they call the Garden Building. So I'm losing some of my video screening here.
I think you're having some audio
I'm
issues.
hoping that you can hear me. Yes, yeah, I think I'm back on now. Right, I'm losing my video feed, but the building in the center bottom part of the sheet is the existing carriage house. And that is the main subject of the citation.
We are having difficulty, Chris, understanding you.
Okay. All right, let's see if I can bring it back up. Okay, can you hear me now again?
We can hear you. There's a bit of an echo, but let's try to continue.
Oh, okay. So the building that we call the carriage house is the one that is the main subject of the application. And that's in the center part of the site towards the bottom of the page. And that is an existing 2.5-story building with 4 units. And that building will be completely removed and replaced with a new three-story building with 14 units, a net gain
of 10
of 10
units.
units. And the building is located pretty much
Chris,
in
the
the
audio's-
same,
the audio's
part
not
of the
great.
Site as existing.
You're getting a big echo.
I'm gonna try to turn off, no, I'm gonna do this. All right, I left one of my video feeds, so, can you hear me now without the echo?
Yeah, much better.
Yes, that's better.
A little bit better?
Yes.
All right, well, I'll continue on. So the carriage house is the existing 2.5-story building in the center bottom part of the site. It's existing 4 units, and that will be replaced with a new 3-story, 14-unit building. All right. And is my volume coming through okay?
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds good, Chris.
All right, Mark, maybe if you go to the next page, we can get to the stormwater. Yep. I'll try to get back on. Yeah, I'm having trouble here, hearing everyone else.
We can
Here's
hear
the
you.
stormwater. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, so most of the work occurs on the southeastern part of the site. You can see the new building in the same location as the old. The parking lot to the east of the new building is being reconstructed, and you can see that we have a new infiltration system in the middle of that parking lot. Yep, correct. And you can also see a smaller infiltration system to the kind of lower right-hand side of the existing 3-story building. Correct. So those are infiltration systems A and B. And there was a lot of back and forth about where to place these and where to direct the overflow from these. I'm just going to very quickly give you the rundown of how the correspondence with town went. But basically, we submitted a drainage report on June 19th, which we believe complied with the town regulations. We received a response on July the 21st from Ms. Vanessa Valadares, the head of the public, head of engineering over there, with a follow-up email on July 22nd from Drew Brendelmeyer, who's the senior civil engineer. They had some pretty minor comments on the design of the system. We responded to those comments in writing on July 27th. On a separate track, we were having a discussion with a representative from 208 Flax Hill Road, who is the abutting property owner to the southwest, about the systems. They had downloaded our plans and drainage report from the town website, but they did not see the letter that we sent on July 27th to the town. So there was some information that they didn't have, and they ended up sending us an email on August 3rd. Some of those questions were already addressed in our July 27th letter to the town, but there were some other concerns they brought up, basically about directing some of the runoff to their site. So again, we revised the plans on August the 11th, and we sent another letter to Ms. Valadares on August the 11th, in which we changed the location of System B and redirected the overflow from System A. And then on August the 14th, we received another email from Drew Brendelmeyer, and we responded to that the same day on August the 14th, which was basically more explanation of what we changed on August 11th, but didn't have any changes to the system. And then we did finally, on August the 17th, get a final sign off from Department of Works. So I think I'll just stop there unless there's any questions from anyone. But you can see that most of the site work is just contained to the center part of the site. We are picking up some storm water from the existing 3-story garden building at the rear of the site, which we're not required to do. But at the end of the day, I think we've satisfied everyone's concern about drainage, including the abutting property owner to the southwest. And if there's any questions, I can add them now, or I can turn the presentation over to Mr. Mark Hopper. who will go
I've got a
through
very
the
quick-
architectural.
Very quick question about the drainage system.
Sure.
What does the city require of you? You're building to 25-year storm, 100-year storm?
Yes, it's 25-year, which is a large storm. It's about, off the top of my head, I believe it's about 6.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. So it's a pretty extreme storm event as compared to maybe a 100-year storm, which I think is about 8 inches of rain. So it's, 80% of a 100-year storm. Remember, the storms are like on a logarithmic scale, so that a 25-year storm is very close to a 100-year storm. It's not 25% of a 100-year storm.
Right.
So it's a large storm event, and it's a very concentrated storm. And the systems we designed to have to be able to withstand that flow and reduce flow and volume up to and including that storm event.
Thank you.
Mr. Schulman, if there are any other questions, or Mr. DeAngelis? If
Uh,
not,
If
not,
commissioners have any questions, please. If not, let's move on.
could Mark Hopper come on and explain his component parts, the architecture changes, the floor plan and architecture of the new building, please?
This is your show.
Thank
Great, thank you, everybody. Let me just toggle through this. Okay, here we go. Thank you. For the record, my name is Mark Hopper. I'm an architect and principal at Kroski Architects. I'm happy to be here in front of you presenting this project. And on a side note, this is the second time our office has been in front of the commission with this type of project. We were successful with the project on 3 Elmcrest that has recently finished construction, and we believe is very much an asset to the town and an example of the work effort that we put into projects of these types. So starting with the Ferris Mansion, which is the piece of the project that we want to get into for a reconstruction of historic elements. You can kind of see in this slide that we've got a photograph of the original mansion, as Attorney Sochi pointed out, as a Queen Anne style, which is kind of representative of asymmetrical facades, bay windows, towered turrets, wraparound porches, patterned wood shingles. The current mansion you see it in the center portion, how it exists today. There was a fire back in 1956 that was up in the attic and severely damaged the 2 cross gables and the roof of the corner turret. And through the history of the project, as it's moved into multifamily housing, the front porch and the porte cochere were removed from the building. When we started to take a look at this project, we really kind of focused on what we felt were the 3 largest character defining elements of the building, which Attorney Sochi pointed out, which is kind of representative in the proposed mansion rendering all the way to the right. And those 3 elements were the wraparound porch, the capping of the turret with a new roof structure, and the reconstruction of the 2 primary gables that face east and west on the building. One that faces here towards Flax Hill, the other larger one on the south side of the building. So that's what we concentrated on with our design effort. Other things that we're going to, that will occur in the building is we're going to take off the existing vinyl siding, exposing the existing siding below to be able to understand the conditions of that. And if it's repairable, we'll do the very same types of work that we did over at 3 Elmcrest. And if the character defining elements and the existing siding is in poor condition, we will bring new siding back in materials that are modern, but still represent the period materials of the time. This slide is a existing floor plan and proposed floor plan. As Chris pointed out, the major change to the first floor is really this wraparound porch. Again, it affects the location of the existing 4 parking spaces in the front setback. As you can see from the existing floor plan, the 4 parking spaces are relatively close to the building. To be able to accommodate the wraparound porch, we need to create a little space and slide these existing 4 spaces back towards the street. This new wraparound porch will essentially be the main entrance for the front 1-bedroom unit off of the porch, and will wrap around to the side entrance where a central stair is that essentially is the point of entrance for the remaining unit on the first floor, the 2 units on the 3rd floor, and the 2 units on the 2nd floor, kind of jumped floors there. So this is the major architectural addition to this level. As was pointed out earlier, and just to reinforce, we're not anticipating any other changes to the unit configurations on the interior of the building, with the exception of obviously at the 3rd floor, with the addition of the 2 cross gables, there will be some amount of work that we'll have to contend with there. This slide shows existing elevations, the primary west elevation that faces Flax Hill on the left, the existing south elevation on the lower level, again on the left, and then the proposed improvements to those elevations. We show in our submission the increase in height and average roof heights. We fall within the height restrictions, so we don't have any exceedances there, but this gives you a view from an elevational point of view of what we're anticipating with the new reconstruction of the Ferris Mansion. Colored elevation to give you an idea of what we're thinking for the coloration of the building. The main ground floor is brick. Again, we're removing the vinyl siding on the 2nd and 3rd floor. And this is the color palette that we'll be utilizing for the project. And we felt that it fits in with the Queen Anne style and the character of the building. Moving on, this is an indication of materials. Again, lower left-hand corner, colored elevation. Here we illustrate the colors of the building. The main body is this light blue. Major rakes and trim pieces is the country redwood, and then trim pieces is this Coventry gray. As part of this project, we will not be replacing windows, so we'll be utilizing the existing windows, but as part of the updating of the exterior envelope, we will be adding additional trim around the windows, and that will be PVC material that's still very reminiscent of size and configuration of the historic features of the building, and will be colored in the highlight red coloration. Shingles will be architectural asphalt in this configuration, and the rest of this material board shows the types of period trims that we'll be utilizing on the building, as well as the columns, to bring back the historic character and nature of the project. I think before I move on to the new carriage building, I'd like to open up if there's any questions about the Ferris Mansion upgrades. Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to the carriage house. Nope. Well, one overall view of the new building, shown in context with the annex back behind and a face of the carriage house to the right. So a good segue and lead into the carriage house building.
Before you do that, can you go back?
Absolutely.
The trees I'm seeing here, I presume that is new planting being added to the landscape here?
Yes, there is. We have a landscape plan that's part of our project. We have, so here we go. So you can see some of the new planting materials here, as well as additional screening to the south, and then some additional planting materials across the front of the garden building. I must say that Workforce Partners does an excellent job on maintaining their the landscaping around their buildings. I think that's one of the things that they've identified that helps differentiate their products, and the work that they've proposed as part of this overall project, well, I think will enhance that. There's also an additional planting bed in this area that you'll be able to see that's right around the main entrance to the new carriage house building.
Can we go back to that previous picture, the elevation of the mansion itself with the trees in front?
Yep.
No, the one that one. I think the mansion looks very nice. The other buildings, frankly, less so. I'm wondering if it's possible to increase the size of the two, and I think you had 3 trees out here to better screen, frankly, the rest of the property.
Hey, Mark,
Yeah, go ahead, Kevney.
it's Kevney Moses from Workforce Partners. Good evening, everyone. If I might be able to just jump in quickly for 1 minute and help clarify a few points about the landscaping. Would that be all right, Mr. Shulman?
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you very much. So the trees that are actually depicted in Mark's rendering here, those are in fact existing. And after purchasing the property a few years ago, as Mark had mentioned, one of our primary goals and missions is to have sustainable sites and to also make good living environments. And a piece of that for us is creating viable landscapes. So over the period of our ownership, we have done a number of planting installations and improvements to the property, all of which typically contain native and adaptive drought tolerant material, also material that attracts wildlife, etc. So actually in 2019, this is just last year, we installed 3 Cercis canadensis, or eastern redbuds. In Mark's image, that's kind of to the right of the path. So if you were to actually drive by 204 Flax and see the site today, you would see 3 nice redbuds that were put there actually for the purpose of helping to screen that parking lot. And then to the left of the path, there's 2 very nice specimen Coosa dogwoods. And those 2 help to screen the parking lot and will only grow over time. we've also installed a wealth of shrubs throughout the site, and the landscaping plan shows that all of that material is to remain. And if it needs to move, part of any of the proposed construction, it will be transplanted on site. So, yeah, again, I think that what we've done helps screen the parking lot tremendously. But obviously, if the commission thought that there was more to be done there, I would, obviously be open to hearing that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anything else? Okay, great, moving on. So these last couple slides are explanation and floor plan and elevation of the new carriage house building. The location of we located the new carriage house on top of essentially the footprint of the existing carriage house along the southern portion of the property. We selected this area because it was really the most conducive for a new building when we started to take a look at the grades and rock outcroppings of to the north in the existing parking area. We also felt that this location was ideal because it allowed us to put the building into the side of the slope. From a plan configuration, what we have here is a single loaded corridor building with residential units to the south and interior and exterior corridors on floors to the north. So we really have a single loaded corridor arrangement. This way, all the circulation paths face the parking and the units themselves face to the south towards the adjacent residential properties. This lower level, what we term basement floor, has an interior corridor, 3 units, 2 one-bedroom units with a single. This with a single studio, excuse me. This studio is designated as the workforce housing unit. Up on the first floor, which is at the level of the existing or the existing parking area, we've got again 2 one-bedroom units with a studio that stacks. We have 2 parking spaces that park underneath the building, and entry area here that accesses the exterior corridor, and the 2 stairs that allows residents to move from this level up to the second and third floor or down to the basement area. These 3 units here will be type B handicapped accessible units because they're at grade. So they will have accessibility to each of these 3 units. The second and third floor are identical in configuration. We have a studio, a 1-bedroom, and then where the 1-bedroom was located in the basement and first floor now gets converted to a 2-bedroom unit, and at the end becomes the other 2-bedroom unit. So we've got a pretty nice mix from studios to 1-bedrooms to 2-bedroom units in this facility. The thing that we kind of like about the exterior corridor is that provides opportunity for these units in the center of the plan to have exterior windows off of the kitchen dining rooms, which allows and will provide some nice cross ventilation through some of these units, and also provides natural light from 2 sides, which is I think is a real benefit for these types of units. Moving to the exterior elevations, on the upper level, east and west elevation. East elevation, you get an idea of the slope and how the building tucks into the side of the slope. The dotted line shows you the floor and wall of the basement level. West elevation is the elevation that faces Flax Hill. And what you can start to see here is that each of these units all have what we call it kind of a Juliet balcony, a very shallow balcony. It allows a much larger window opening. The balcony and rail provides safety, but the balcony in itself is shallow. It's not something that's occupiable, but it provides opportunity for increased natural light and ventilation, but also from an aesthetic standpoint, provides some relief in layering to the elevation. This north elevation is the predominant entry elevation. This is the elevation that faces parking. Again, you can see the 3 open corridors with windows into kitchens beyond, and then slightly shown in some of these areas are the access doors into the units. This is the main entry porch. So and from a site plan standpoint, this is where there's increased plantings that mark the entrance, little covered porch that allows the transition from parking into the building, and then for residents to be able to access their particular units. Final elevation is the south elevation. You get a glimpse here of how the building tucks into the side of the hill. It reveals itself a little bit, so you see 4 floors here. But the elements are, aesthetic elements are some smaller gable ends with the larger gable ends that are centered around paired Juliet balconies. Again, building cross-section that kind of shows how the unit itself complex sits into grade. Again, we went through average grade calculation and to certainly determine that the height and elevation of these buildings fit within the zoning regulations. Finally, colored elevations, we maintain very similar coloration to the Ferris Mansion with some slight modifications. The Ferris Mansion had brick on the bottom. Here we'll have clapboard sidings with a little darker color palette with shingle siding up above. Some of the elements of the aesthetic elements of the existing carriage house that we are bringing forward to the new carriage house are this detail of a siding flare. So you've got clapboards at the base with shingles up above with a horizontal band of trim work and a slight flare of the siding, and then the reuse of gable end rake brackets that hold a projected rake trim. Finally, a porch or materials board for the carriage house. You'll see here that it's a use of very similar materials to the Ferris Mansion reconstruction. We wanted these 2 structures to be able to have a dialogue with each other, and I think they create a good foil to the other structures that are on site. The carriage house will certainly sit in front of the garden building to the rear and will become more prominent. So I think that that dialogue that frames the site will be a good one and a benefit aesthetically overall to the site. Last thing that, so colored elevations, this is kind of indicative of what I was indicating. Here's the garden building to the rear. So this building will sit in front of it and essentially block the views from Flax Hill back to the back part of the site. New planting beds, as I had pointed out, around the new porch entrance to the new carriage house building. Now, the final slide that I wanted to show you tonight is that the current site plan has no pole-mounted fixtures throughout the site. To light the backside of the building, we wanted to keep that concept consistent, So what we're showing here is that there's a number of fixtures that are located in the ceiling, one under the porch, 4 fixtures that are underneath the parking area, 3 fixtures that are in the ceiling of the exterior circulation corridors along the north side of the building, which are indicated in the catalog cuts down here. So these are the ceiling mounted fixture, typical 4-inch round downlight. Then there are 3 wall packs, one in this location, one in this location, one this location, that is indicative of this type of fixture. And what you have here is a photometrics plan that is essentially showing that to the north, here's our property line here, to the north, we get no light bleed. We've got 0 foot candles on the north side of the property line. And through this diagram, you can see how the foot candles start to range from 1.9 close to the building and then range all the way to 0.2 just at the property line. So we've complied with the zoning regulations with regard to light levels and not having anything bleed across the property line. And at this point, it concludes our architectural presentation. And I think we'd be happy to entertain any questions that the commissioners might have.
Commissioners, any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schulman. Thank you, Mr. Hopper. At this point, I would like Tess Schwartz to unmute, come on and make a brief presentation about the traffic analysis that she undertook for this project. While she's getting ready, I just want to call to your attention the fact that all required SEAC sign-offs have been submitted, and that includes Fire, Public Works, Water Pollution Control Authority, South Norwalk Electric and Water, and the Health Department. Okay, Tess, are you on?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Schwartz, and I'm a professional traffic operations engineer with Tessera Engineering out of East Windsor, Connecticut. I reviewed traffic operations and site access. We don't anticipate a large amount of traffic being generated by the site, but as it is a historic site, we did conduct a traffic impact study. For the traffic from the site, the peak hours where we could expect to see the highest impact would be during the morning peak hour, 8 to 9 a.m. and the afternoon peak hour of 5 to 6 p.m. Due to conditions during COVID, we're seeing a huge drop in traffic volumes, significantly lower than what we saw in the recession. So if we took traffic counts right now, they wouldn't be indicative of typical traffic. So in the absence of counts taken right now, the next best thing is to look at historic data. So I pulled some traffic volumes from Connecticut DOT from 2017 and had a conversation with Mike Yasak from Transportation, Traffic and Parking. He agreed that those volumes would be acceptable to use. I then spoke with the DOT Bureau of Policy and Planning. They also agreed and suggested a growth rate of 0.6% to grow the volumes from the 2017 condition to the design year of 2021. So we had our no build volumes without the expansion of the apartment complex. Then we, in order to look at traffic impact, we compare that to the build condition with those additional 10 units. The existing driveway has a similar situation as the roadway, Flax Hill, in that people are working from home and are not making as many trips. So if we counted the driveway right now, it again wouldn't be indicative of typical traffic. So I used the ITE trip generation rates to estimate the number of trips from the driveway. During the morning, there's approximately 38 trips, 10 entering and 28 exiting the driveway. And during the afternoon, there would be 46 trips, 27 entering and 19 exiting. I also ran the trip generation for the 10 additional apartment units. And during the morning, we could see additional 5 trips, 1 entering the driveway, 4 exiting, and 6 during the afternoon with 4 entering and 2 exiting. So adding the generated trips from those 10 units to the no build, we get the build traffic volumes. And I did a capacity analysis using Synchro traffic software, and the levels of service don't change from the no build to the build condition. For vehicles making a left turn into the driveway from Flax Hill Road, there was a level of service A during build and no build conditions. And for the driveway approach to the intersection, we saw a level of service B during the morning and a level of service C in the afternoon, which both are considered acceptable. I also took a look at any potential safety concerns in the area. I collected collision data from the Connecticut Crash Data Repository for the 3-year period of 2017 to 2019. There was an average of 1 collision per year at the Site Drive location, 5 per year at the intersection of Flax Hill Road at Taylor Ave, and 2 per year at Flax Hill Road at Low Street. There were no injuries or fatalities reported in those crashes, and I didn't see any unusual frequency or severity of crashes. So I didn't see any existing safety issues there. I also conducted a site distance analysis to make sure that people can exit the driveway safely. The required site distance for the driveway is 335 feet. I measured the site distance to the left, looking to the left, to the south, to be in excess of 500 feet, and to the right it was 340 feet. So both of those meet the requirement to provide safe egress. And so with all of the analyses together, it's my professional opinion that the addition of the 10 units will not have a significant impact to traffic in the area.
I have 2 tangentially related questions. Attorney Suchi had mentioned that there were some pre-existing undersized spots, parking spaces on the property. Do you know how many there are and what the dimensions of those parking spaces are?
Chris, would you like to handle that?
Sure. As far as the existing spaces, they vary in sizes. It looks like they've been added over the years. I don't know off the top of my head the exact number and size, but what's proposed will meet your regulations. Given we did take some credit for historic credits for the size and number of spaces. I believe it's without the historic credit, I believe we need 60 spaces. With the historic credit, I believe that gets reduced down to 45, which is 75% of 60. And I think we proposed 58. So we're only 2 short of what it would normally be without the historic credits. And as far as the size, everything we're proposing will meet your standard sizes. Some of the dimensions were reduced as allowed under the historic credits, but those also fall within your zoning. That's all clearly outlined. We have a very clear outline of the number of spaces and all the sizes of them on the site plan drawing, which is C2. And I believe it's been reviewed by your planner and found to be acceptable.
Thank you.
Mr. Schulman, I think the number of non-conforming spaces that have been there and are pre-existing is somewhere in the range of 8 to 10, thereabout. And they're generally the spaces that exist behind the Ferris Mansion and adjacent to the annex behind it. Those are the ones that have existed and will continue to exist in their current configuration.
Liz, it's Kevney, just to pop in for 1 minute, if that would be all right, Mr. Schulman.
Sure.
Thank you. Liz, I think you're very close on those numbers, but it was actually a minimum of 11 pre-existing non-conforming undersized stalls. And Mr. Schulman, those dimensions varied from just over 7 feet in width, you know, all the way up to 8.25-ish, you know, in width. And there were some undersized length as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That concludes the presentations that we would like to make before you this evening. Before you open it up to the public, though, I did want to mention a few things. In addition to the interactions that Chris DeAngelis has had with the neighbors with respect to drainage, Kevney Moses has had specific interactions with representatives of the board of directors of the condominium complex at 208 Flax Hill. And they had various conversations about various non-zoning related issues, but among the issues that were raised, some of which as late as yesterday, had to do with repairs to a fence that may have been the result of a tree that is either on our property, their property, or a combination. Cleaning of some of the structures at 208 Flax Hill post-construction based upon construction debris and dust that may come about. Some interior signage to the benefit of both neighbors, some additional limits on the hours of construction and use of a common easement. And certainly we will continue to work with our neighbors and address reasonable concerns that they may raise, as would hopefully any respectful neighbor would be. And I'm sure that Workforce Partners will continue to conduct themselves in a way that our neighbors will find that they are respectful neighbors and considerate of the neighbors who live there, those who own the properties, and the working relationship will be a very good one. But at this point, that concludes our our presentation in chief, and we look forward to any comments the commission has or any comments from the public.
Okay. First, are there any further comments right now from commissioners? All right, if not, I'll ask Brian to open it up to the public.
Sure. We have one person with their hand raised. So if you'd like to speak on this application, you can use the raise your hand feature. If you're dialed in on a phone and you'd like to raise your hand, you would dial *9. So I'll bring over Alicia Bernesco. And then if you could just, when you come over, state your name for the record and address.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, this is Alicia Granesco. I am the condo board president for 208 Flax Hill. I just wanted to say I've had several conversations, as Liz mentioned, with Kevney, and one of our residents has had some conversations with Chris. They've been very pleasant conversations, and I want to thank everyone we've spoken with for the upgrades to the property that they're doing. We're very much in favor of this, and we like what we see. Although as the president of the board, I do have 38 other unit owners that I do answer to. So I just had a few concerns. And as Liz mentioned, we've been having they're non-zoning issues, really, and we've been having those discussions on the side. But I did want to say that, we are very much in favor of this project and like the work that we've seen so far, and look forward to working with the team on this and also being good neighbors. I did have two questions as Mark and Liz were going through their presentations, and one was for Mark regarding the lights on the carriage house. I saw you're doing lights on the front, security lights. Would there also be security lights on the back? And my concern is, for our property, our bedrooms look out onto the parking lot, which then backs up to the carriage house. And I just didn't know if there's going to be bleed from those lights that will affect us, at night when we're trying to sleep and we're closing our blinds.
Yes, there are no light fixtures located on the south elevation of the new building, so there will be no light bleed from building mounted fixtures. Obviously, with
Okay.
lots of glass and windows, there will be some interior lights, but there are no exterior lights proposed.
Okay, great, great. I know there's right now a light that is near the laundry room, and it shines directly in my bedroom. But I know, there's nothing that can really be done about that. My other question, Mark, was as you're designing the carriage house, since we do look onto the back of that building, I noticed that you did have, as you mentioned, those Juliet balconies, and I wanted to make sure that you are taking consideration that as we do look upon that, we don't want to see just a plain back building, that we would like to see some more ornaments or have some of those gables. Like you mentioned, you have the Juliet balconies. I want to make sure that's also being taken into consideration.
Yes, it absolutely is. There's, varying window patterns. There are the Juliet balconies. There are the 2 large gable ends, 2 smaller gable ends that do have the bracketed details, and the larger gable end has a pediment trim, and there will be, different siding materials as well as different colorations. So
Okay.
I think there's some really good variety aesthetically on that south elevation that I think that I would hope that would be very pleasing to the condo owners at 208.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. My other question was for Tess regarding the parking. And as you're doing your counts, I wanted to make sure you knew this is a shared driveway, I should say, the entrance.
Yes.
We have the easement with 204. And so when you were taking your trip counts, were you counting just all cars that were entering the property, whether they're going to 204 or 208? Or were you only looking to see who went to 204 property?
Yes, it's a shared driveway, so I did estimate the trips from the apartments and from the condos, 204 and 208.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. One other question I did have was, as we do have an easement on our property for this driveway, my concern is the construction trucks coming in. I'm not sure if this is the right place to bring it up, but I was wondering if it's possible to look into having a construction entrance. We recently did our parking lot. We ripped it up and redid our parking lot about 5 years ago. So I'm very, very concerned about what happens to our parking lot. And I do know that 204, again, as they mentioned, if there's any damage, that they will repair it. But just for the traffic coming in and out in the morning with our residents trying to get to work, is it possible to look into having a separate construction entrance and not have all the construction trucks come through our property, through that shared driveway area?
If I may, any additional curb cut that we would need, even if on a temporary basis, I believe is subject to the Department of Public Works and it's not a zoning issue.
Okay.
I know that Chris DeAngelis, or at least my understanding was that Chris DeAngelis had preliminary conversations with DPW to see if that's something that could be accommodated. And as I mentioned before, we will certainly work with the ownership of 208 to minimize concerns that you have relative to use and to of the easement area, and what should happen should construction vehicles and the like create any damage or issues with respect to that easement area. But at this, that's a new curb cut is a DPW issue, not a zoning issue.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Those are the questions I had. As Liz mentioned, we've been having some other discussions that are outside of zoning. And I just wanted to say again, we are looking forward to working with the team and to have the new buildings. They're going to look I know they're just going to look absolutely beautiful. I went over to 3 Crescent to look at that building, and it was beautiful. And so we're very happy with the work that's happening with our neighbors, and how I think it's really going to uplift the street and just make this area look very nice, and really bring up the level also.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, next, Daniel Benjamin.
Yes, good evening, members of the commission. My name is Daniel Benjamin. I do represent the Flax Hill Section 1 Condominium Association. And I do have not an objection, but a question that I would pose to the board. And it is a zoning question. And the zoning question has to do with side yard. And I believe the question can be first seen on the landscaping plan LP-1. If you would take a look at that, you will see a concrete stairs. And the concrete stairs is at the proposed new building. Do you folks see that?
Mark, it's Kev. Would you bring that plan up?
Yeah. If you take a look at the plan, you see the proposed 3-story, 14-unit residential structure. And then immediately beneath that, the new turf area. And you will see what appears to be a stairway. You all see that? Can you see it?
Mark, you might need to zoom in.
Okay, can you see that? So now if you would, now that you're oriented with regard to those stairs, I would bring your attention to site plan drawing C-1. And if you bring your attention to those same stairs, if you could zoom that in. If you can zoom that into the proposed 3-story residential building with basement drawing. Yeah, that's good. And you will see the side yard measurements are taken from the corners of the building. 19.5 feet on either corner. And there is no measurement of side yard from the stairs that are to be constructed. So apparently, and this is just a question, I would question why the side yard is not measured from the new construction of the concrete stairs. And if it would be measured from the new construction of the concrete stairs, might it not encroach into the side yard that is required for my client's benefit? So that's one question that I did have that maybe zoning could answer. And on behalf of my clients, we do have concern, as Alicia said, with regard to the parking. Obviously, that's a major concern of ours. We do not wish for the new residents and their guests to be parking in our lot, which is adjacent to 204. So we're hopeful that that will be considered by the 204 folks. And also with regard to our shared driveway, another concern is that construction vehicles and construction material not be stored on our driveway. That the 208 lot and driveway should not be used for staging of construction or storage of any equipment, materials, or vehicles. And obviously, we would not want construction workers hanging out on our property. So if that could be considered as a condition, we would greatly appreciate it. And another potential condition might be that commensurate with the landscaping, that 204 might trim, cut up, and maybe clean up the vegetation along both sides of the stone wall that divides the 204 property with our property at 208. With regard to the shared driveway, it's our hope that any damage to the 208 parking lot and driveway caused by the large equipment coming in to do the foundation, for example, dig out the foundation, would be repaired by 204 and brought back to a condition as was good as before or better than the pre-existing condition. Lastly, it is our hope that 204 would remove a wooden fence that sits atop a stone wall, again, dividing our property with 204 with something more aesthetically pleasing that will allow vines to grow over it. And it's our hope that it would soften the look and create a green wall between the properties. So these are things that we hope the commission would consider as conditions should the commission decide to grant this application. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Brian, do we have anyone else waiting?
Yep, I'm going to bring over Juliet Lescano.
Hello, good evening. My question was, I don't know if it's a comment or question, but it's more for Tess on the
I'm
traffic
sorry,
study.
can you give us your name and your address, please?
Sorry, Juliet Lescano, 208 Flax Hill Road.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm a little surprised on the study from the traffic study. So I guess my question is more for Tess. Understand that it's difficult times and traffic is not normal at this time, but was just to understand, was the study done on Flax Hill Road, or was somebody actually in the driveway?
So the traffic on Flax Hill Road was from Connecticut DOT counts, and the trips that were estimated from the existing apartments and condos were from the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation publication. It's a standard publication that we use to estimate traffic trips from a development site. So I felt that was more conservative than using the lower volumes if we had counted right now.
Okay, so if someone had stood at so no one stood there on the street counting it. It was more, the study was done with those numbers, with the DOT numbers, rather than having someone stand there, because that was the better option because of what's going on in the world right now.
Yes.
Okay. Then no further questions for that. You can't dispute that. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just that the easement is a little difficult, so.
Thank you. Brian, anyone else?
I don't see anything. If anybody would like to speak, use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you're on a telephone. I think you are all set.
Okay, then we'll turn it back to Attorney Suchi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the members of the public who took the time this evening to participate. Just a few things I wanted to mention, and I'm not going to review all the comments that were in response to Ms. Grinesko and Mr. Benjamin's comments. But certainly with a shared driveway and an easement, my client recognizes its obligations and responsibilities with use of that in terms of construction or other, and should there be issues related to that, they have already indicated that they are aware of what their responsibilities are and will continue to do so and continue to abide by the terms and conditions of that easement. As far as the side, the stairway on the side, section 118.810I does permit projections of various features, architectural features, including steps and porches and stairways into the side yard setback up to 2 feet. So perhaps something that we need to look at, but I would imagine that that would have been something addressed by staff had it been an issue. But there is an availability under the regulations to encroach beyond the setback for something like a stairway. I don't believe we have any plan to stage at 208. That's not our property. We'd have to stage on our own property. And as far as workers or use of 208 by construction workers or others or parking, it's private property. It's not our property, and we do have to maintain that neighborly relationship and abide by all the requirements, restrictions, and obligations that we have one to the other. And that holds true for 208 as well. But they're good neighbors, and they will continue to do so, as I'm sure 208 will. And should there be an issue, leadership at 208 now has direct contact with my clients, and I'm sure if there's a problem, they can get in touch with them right away, and my client will be responsive right away as well. As far as cleaning up the vegetation on the other side of the stone wall, if 208 provides us with permission to come on their property, I'm sure that's something my client would consider. And then as far as the remove the wooden fence and replace it with something else, I believe that was something that was just raised yesterday. And once again, it's something that my client would consider, and as part of their ongoing discussions with the neighbors will certainly take that under advisement. The only other thing that I have to add was that we had requested by letter dated, I think it was August 3rd, a slightly different breakdown of the affordable units, and that letter and our rationale was shared with Mr. Kleppen and Ms. Wilson. And just so that you know, Ms. Wilson was suggesting that the affordable units should be divided as one studio, 2 1-bedroom, and 2 2-bedroom. And we had offered, instead of that mix of affordables, that it be 2 studios, 2 1-bedroom, and 1 2-bedroom. And frankly, the reason is that the vast majority of the units that exist on property right now, and they're in the 3 buildings that are going to remain untouched, that coupled with the difficulty of moving people out of units in this era of COVID, we just think it's more appropriate to have the 2-2-1 mix of, rather than the 1-2-2. And it's really because we're providing more studio units anyway in this development. Thought that would be more appropriate. There is a letter in the file in our rationale, and I think the regulations, specifically section 118.1050E1, does give some flexibility to the commission to allow that workforce housing units shall be reasonably dispersed throughout the development and shall contain on average the same number of bedrooms and the same quality of construction as the other units. And I think on average, since we're providing more studio units with this new building, that it's appropriate, and the commission has the flexibility to alter this in the mix as we've suggested. I wanted to make sure that was before you. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this project meets or exceeds all of the requirements of special permit set forth in section 118.1450. I know you have a very lengthy agenda, but we have set forth our rationale for all of the standards of review that are set forth in that section of the regulations. Our moving papers, applications, reports, and the like certainly support and substantiate all the standards of review that you have in your regulations and how we've abided by them, met or exceeded them. And unless you have any other questions of Ms. Schwartz, Mr. DeAngelis, or Mr. Hopper, or myself, we have nothing further to add, and we look forward to the commission acting on this application as quickly as it is able. And that is all for me.
Okay, are there any final questions from the commission? And I see a lot of head shaking. Steve, any comments from the staff regarding the project?
No, we'll double check the setback line with the staircase, and maybe that'd be a condition of approval that the stair element is shown must meet the setback requirement. We can work that out after, I think.
Okay. With that, we'll close the public hearing and move on. The next item is action on the public hearing. I'd like to hear from the commissioners whether you feel we should act on this item now, or whether you would prefer to act on it at a future meeting. I welcome your input.
Mr. Chairman, this is Richard Rowena. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Dick.
I seem to have lost my video for some reason. I would be in favor of moving forward with this application tonight.
So would I think. It looks to me to be a good project.
Is there anyone, any of the commissioners have a contrary view?
No, I agree with my fellow commissioners.
All right, then I'd welcome a motion to approve the project with the stipulation that the issue regarding the side setback needs to be addressed. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Okay, Michael moves and Josh seconds. Any further comments from commissioners? If not, Steve, let's do a roll call.
Certainly. Let's make sure I can see everybody because there's a couple missing, I think. Hold on one sec. Okay. Mr. Schulman?
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon?
Yes.
Mr. Goldstein?
Yes.
Mr. Mancini?
Approve.
Ms. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Rod, we
You're
can't
muted,
hear
but-
you. If it's yes, can you put your, we got you. Thank you.
Okay. And lastly, Mr. Rowena.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. The project is approved with that condition. Let's move on.
Thank you, all of you, for your time this evening and through the process. And I wish you an enjoyable rest of the summer. Stay well and stay safe. Thank you on behalf of my client as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, 13-15 SP 150 Glover LLC. That's a request for release of surety. And I believe there is a Attorney Waters.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am here. There's actually, Mr. Chairman, there are two requests that are being made. The first one is a release of a surety that was provided in the amount of $17,500 for certain improvements that were not completed at the time that the initial temporary certificate of occupancy was issued. and those items have all been completed. I believe your staff has confirmed that. The second is a reduction of the bond that was posted in the amount of $30,000 for sedimentation and erosion control, and is typically your practice. That would be reduced to a 15% maintenance bond, which would be $4,500, which would be retained by the commission for a period of 1 year, and assuming that there's no issue, that would then be subject to a further request for release. So those are our two requests.
Okay. Steve, comments regarding the release of the bond and the reduction?
Yeah, it's my understanding staff's been out and inspected the site. I believe A is completely buttoned up pretty much at this point. There are some road improvements that they're working with DPW on, but I think those are separate from the items in front of you tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, this is just for building A. There is a separate sedimentation erosion control bond for building B and another one for building C. And there are additional improvements that are still being completed for both of those, but this is just for building A.
Thank you for the clarification. Questions or comments from the commission? All right, if not, can I have a motion to approve the release of the funds?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Witherspoon moves. Second?
Second.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Mancini, Mr. Goldstein, both. Second.
Frank.
Any further comments? All right, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone in opposition? All right, approved unanimously.
Thank you very much.
All right, review and action on new applications. The first 6-20 SP, Norden Place KBLLC, special permit for proposed new 330,000 square foot warehouse and wholesale distribution use located in an existing building and related site improvements. Who is representing Norden Place?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Carolyn Cavolo. I'm here for Norden Place.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Carolyn Cavolo. I'm an attorney with Shipman and Goodwin LLP, here on behalf of our clients, Norden Place KB LLC, which filed the special permit application currently before you on June 30th, 2020. It's located in Tax District 3, Block 17 and Lot 40A. This portion of the property is in the restricted industrial zone. With me tonight is Eric Lindquist, an engineer with Tighe & Bond, and Chris Granatini, an engineer also with Tighe & Bond. We're here tonight to introduce at least part of our team and to give the commission a brief overview of our application and the proposed site plans. We are currently in the process of securing and responding to comments from city departments, as well as neighborhood stakeholders. And our intention is to return to the commission in the near future for further review and with a package of supplemental revised application materials that we hope will fully address the comments we receive from city staff and departments and our neighbors. Before I hand it over to Mr. Lindquist to begin a brief high-level summary of the proposed site changes, I'd like to just take a moment to explain the structure of our application. I can try to share the screen. That working? Sorry.
Should be on the bottom center.
There it
There you
is.
go.
Great. So the applicant here and our client, Norton Place KB LLC, is under contract to purchase the easterly portion of the property. And I'll just show you the overview. So this is Norton Place 10, and the existing Norton building is what we're discussing today. So our client is under contract to purchase the easterly portion of the property, and that will be known as the east unit. This property survey shows you the planned boundary line between the west unit and the east unit. The existing owner of 10 Norton Place A will retain ownership of the western portion of the site, which will be the west unit. And no changes are being proposed to the west side of the property or the building with this application. The east unit, this will be put together as a land condominium, and the condominium has not been declared or recorded yet. It will not be until approvals are obtained and we move forward. Our client is under contract to purchase just a portion of the property. The east unit will contain the easterly portion of 10 Norton Place A, including approximately 330,000 square feet of the existing building. And once the necessary approvals are in place and the land condo unit is purchased, we would be proposing to use this portion of the building for a warehouse and wholesale distribution facility. To be very clear, because I've spoken with some of the neighbors and there was a little confusion on what the use would be. This will not be a direct to consumer distribution center. This would not be a package delivery center. This will be the less intense warehouse and wholesale distribution use. And this would be the sort of the middleman in the life cycle of transportation of a good. And we will have more information in response to city staff comments and our neighbor questions when we return more information on tenant use. I would like to hand it over to Eric Lindquist now, just to go through the proposed site changes so you get just sort of a high level understanding of what those are. Let's see. Eric, if you're on and you want to go through this one.
No worries. For the record, my name is Eric Lindquist. I'm a senior project manager with Ty & Bond, and I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. As Carolyn noted, I'm just going to give a very high level overview. We'll get into a lot more details when we present in September. But basically, there's two main components to the site improvements. The first is the entry modifications that we'll be performing, as well as some improvements on the north side of the condominium portion of the building that Carolyn mentioned for some new loading bays that I'll get to in a minute. The main change out by Norton Place is, if you're familiar with the site, which I'm sure most of you are, there are 3 points of access. One at the northern side, which is where the Avalon driveway entrance comes off of and feeds. It's also the entrance for the Norton facility as well. Then towards the south, there are 2 entrances fairly close to one another. One accesses the southern side of the site, and a third is primarily used for the access to the very southernmost portion of the site that is currently used by the Connecticut DOT for some laydown area as part of some improvements they've been doing in the area. So what the project proposal is to do is to consolidate those 2 driveways at the south end of the site to make it a much more functional entry that is consolidated into one. So there's only 1 curb cut down there instead of 2. It allows us to streamline the approach into the site for the vehicle traffic that's going to be coming in, as well as to make it more of the truck entrance per se for the site, so that the trucks that'll be coming in and using these loading facilities will come in off of this entrance and avoid the Avalon or the northern entrance to the site. So as you go into the site plans and as you skim through them, you'll notice that that improvement has been made. We're going to be upgrading the pavement in the area, upgrading the radiuses, and then coming off of that site and combining those 2 entrances together. As you go through the site, we're also trying to make that entrance farthest to the south, so really not interfering with the operations of the front portion, the front condominium site. So we want to maintain their parking as much as possible. We want to kind of minimize our impacts on them as well. So as we come into the site, the improvements are fairly minimal. They're really just to provide a access for the trucks to come into the site. As we get further and further to the east, as we get over towards where the data center is, you'll see there's some slight improvements to the islands over there. This is really to accommodate the truck movement through the back portion of the site. So it's widening up the drive aisles and providing for better maneuverability for trucks as they come in and out. Additionally, as we come up to the top, you'll see that there's this new loading bays along the north side of the building. These loading bays are pretty much been set up so that we can get a truck to pull in and back up into these facilities. One of the nice adjustments that we've made as part of this process is as you come in the Avalon driveway and service Avalon to the back, there's several curb cuts all along the north side of the Avalon driveway, accessing parking areas and loading areas. We're consolidating or getting rid of, I should say, a lot of those. I don't remember off the top of my head. I can't really see on this from this distance the total number. I think it's 2 or 3, but we're getting rid of several of those curb cuts along the north side there, which will really further segregate the truck movements for the site from the pedestrian and Avalon and the pedestrians using the facility, the employees. So it really segregates those two uses. On top of this, there'll be utility improvements are pretty much negligible. We're really not doing anything except relocating a couple of utilities to accommodate for some of the improvements we're doing for the storm drainage. These are existing buildings that will be maintaining their utility services. The loads will be fairly similar because the uses are fairly similar. There will be additional storm drainage, and I'll go into that in much more detail when we talk in September, but we do have an infiltration system on the north side of the building that will be accommodating the increase in impervious area on that portion of the site, while the net impervious area really didn't change much at all for the site. As you're aware, this is a fairly impervious site overall. But that basically is a summary of the overall changes that we're going to be providing on site. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have, but on that, I prefer to pass it over to Carolyn for now so she can kind of go through some elevations of loading facilities as well.
Mr. Lindquist, if I may, you're talking about trucks and loading docks. Can you clarify, are we talking mostly about 18-wheelers, or are we talking about panel trucks?
Yeah, most of this, I believe, is the 50-foot trucks. There'll be a mix, but they're the WB50s, if you're familiar with those.
Mm-hmm.
That's what most of the movements were for. So the frequency, without getting into too much detail on the generation traffic component, we're going to talk about in September, and there's still some things we're fielding on questions. So we can get into the numbers, but basically they're not going to be that often, but the ones that will be there, I believe, are the WB50s.
Thank you.
So thank you, Eric, and thank you, Chairman. We just want to show a little bit of a preview, just to give you an idea of what these are, what the actual changes are going to look like to the building. Very, very few. We're really not changing the footprint of the building. It's adaptive reuse and just renovation of what's there. If you look, this is the top left is the northeast building elevation. This is the proposed location of the 8 new loading docks. Down here is the southeast building elevation. That is the proposed location of the 6 additional loading docks there. And also the location's a little hard to tell, of the 5 existing loading docks that are going to be retrofitted with new doors. Everything else is pretty much staying the same. And this is sort of just the representation of what those new loading docks will look like. This is the northeast building elevation, and down here is the southeast building elevation with the retrofitted existing and a few additional. So those were really the changes to the building, and we will get into more architectural details when we come back, but we just wanted to give you a feel for the fact that not much is changing with the building, and there were some improvements made to the site layout to accommodate this new use, but we'll get into a lot more of that when we come. We just wanted to familiarize you with sort of what the general plan was. Unless the commission has any questions, I would like to thank the chairman of the commission for your time tonight, and also Mr. Kleppen and Ms. Wilson, who have been just, unbelievably helpful and flexible for us in helping us to get this done during these times.
I'm sure you've been told this by staff, but the big issue here, as I view it, clearly is going to be the impact of the truck traffic on the neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you're well aware of that.
Yes, we are, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And we have reached out to, we've spoken with Mr. Kleppen and Ms. Wilson about it. And then we have also, we are in the process of reaching out to the East Norwalk Neighborhood Association and the various condominium and common interest community neighbors who are near us. And we are planning public outreach and informational sessions. We're going to plan those when it's convenient for everyone. It's a little hard in August, so we're gonna shoot for the first week in September or whenever the critical mass of those neighbors are back and available to participate. And we're looking forward to getting feedback from them and incorporating that into our sort of robust supplemental materials for you in hopefully September.
That's a great idea. Questions from the commissioners? If not, Steve, where can we fit this in on our schedule?
We can be pretty flexible with that. I mean, you're still going to have to schedule a public hearing after the next time you meet. So we'll work with the applicant when they're ready and slot them in.
Okay, I'd suggest let's wait until after they've gotten some input from the community before we hear from them again. So probably not before our second meeting in September.
I believe that's the 16th.
Yes, we're going to be trying to get all that done for that time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next item on our agenda, 02-20 CAM dash, that's 4 Westmere Avenue LLC. It says here it's a second-story addition to an existing single-family residence, but it's actually, from my reading, a tear down of the existing residence and then building on the same footprint a 2-story or 2.5-story residence. Is there someone here to speak to this project?
Yes, Wayne Devanzo, Fairfield County Engineering for 4 Westmere.
Okay. Can we have the information that's up on the screen now taken down? Thank you. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good evening to everybody. Yes, this is basically a reconstruction of a single-family residence that is currently 1 story. It will be 2 stories. It is on the exact same footprint that is proposed from what is there now of approximately 660 square feet. There has previously been a variance granted for the front setback, which is the existing condition as it stands now. We're not going any closer. And again, it is a basically straight up redevelopment of the site with no increase in footprint. The impervious surfaces are actually being reduced with the gravel driveway that's currently there being removed, and a new driveway, a new very short driveway coming in off the road to the internal two-car garage being added. We are proposing a retention system, an infiltration system that will collect the runoff from part of the roof, which will improve the water quality and provide groundwater recharge and further reduce the net runoff. Again, the runoff would be reduced even without that, but we're taking it even a step farther. The existing utilities are going to be reutilized, the sewer, water. WPCA has signed off on the project. DPW is they're a little shorthanded, and they are in the process of reviewing it. I had some communication with Marissa Diaz yesterday. She was hoping to get something by today, but I haven't heard anything, so they are reviewing it. And that is about it. The architect, Richard Wood, is also here, and he and I are available for any questions you may have.
Questions from commissioners? Steve, if I remember, this requires review by the Harbor Commission?
Yeah, so Lou, we're gonna have this hopefully on next week's harbor meeting or whenever they meet next. At
Yeah.
which point they'll make a recommendation and get that to you for your next agenda.
Yes, they had informed me that they're hoping to get us on for the meeting of the 26th.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. If there are no further questions, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item, 03-20 CAM, 300 Wilson Avenue LLC, 300 and 310 Wilson, change of use from manufacturing to dry cleaner, personnel services in rear of building. Mr. Blank, are you representing?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening. Adam Blank for the applicant, 300 Wilson Avenue LLC. I'm with the law firm of Wofsy Rosen, and I live on Bartlett Ave in Norwalk. So 300 Wilson Avenue, the applicant is the owner of a already developed property of about 6.7 acres located at 310 Wilson Avenue. That property abuts Village Creek. Most of you will know it for its more famous tenant, the Sono Ice House. And that's the bulk of the property is the Ice House. But there is in fact a couple of other warehouse buildings on the site. One of them is a 21,000 square foot warehouse. And if I can try to pull it up here. Okay, you guys able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
the yellow, this big white building is the Sono Ice House, and the yellow is the warehouse building. Within this existing building, there's a there is or has been a woodworking manufacturing tenant in about 5,000 or 6,750 square feet of space in that building. That tenant is moving out, and a new tenant, Go Green Dry Cleaners, is proposed to move in. Go Green Dry Cleaners, despite the name, they are in fact a non-toxic, environmentally safe dry cleaning business. It's not your old school dry cleaning. Just so you can see, this is another view of the building with Village Creek here. This is only it's minor interior fit up work on the existing space. There's no changes to the exterior. The only reason it's in front of you is because it's on Village Creek. So it triggered the CAM application. And in fact, because it's a change of use, it will require a public hearing. We've got, the health department has signed off on it. We're waiting on sign offs from DPW, WPCA, and the building department. It's also been referred to the Harbor Commission, who's told us that they'll schedule us for later this month at their, I think it's their fourth Thursday of August or third Thursday. Brian may know, but they're meeting later this month. And we are hoping and anticipating that we'll be scheduled for a public hearing in front of you folks on September 3rd. We have some floor plans which were just recently submitted to your staff. They may not have made their way to you, but this is a little bit different than what you might be expecting for a dry cleaner business. The owner who's on the tenant and the operator is on the Zoom call and can answer questions later on, as is Kevin Conroy, one of the owners of the property. But the Go Green Dry Cleaners, the tenant already operates a number of dry cleaning sort of storefronts throughout Westchester and in Stamford, and has a location in Norwalk that's opening that's not this site. This site, though, would be where they would do the bulk of their cleaning. And they would have, I believe it's 4 to 6 vans that would depart this site in the morning and return in the evening to bring dry cleaning to and from their other sort of retail locations. You'll see there's only a very small little area that's proposed for where a customer on occasion might actually enter this space, but it's really not meant to be a customer service area. It's really essentially a processing area and then sent out. Mike Galante at Frederick Clark and Associates did the traffic evaluation. You should have that. Because this is just a swap of an existing use, he's concluded that there'll be about 23 total vehicle trips during the peak rush hours. That's very similar to what was predicted from the prior user. In total, he thought that this would result in an increase of 5 to 6 vehicles in the peak hour. Although the old user had more truck traffic, this is more vans or a couple of cars. So we don't see traffic as being particularly problematic for this site. There's plenty of parking. And again, like I said, the operator's here and he can go in depth if you'd like, or save it for the public hearing about how he'll run the operation and about why it poses no threat to the waterfront. We did also give you a number of handouts that had the technical and scientific literature about their product to show you that it's fairly a very safe product, much safer than, in fact, the woodworking use that's existed on this property, which is, I should mention, zoned in the Industrial 1 zone. Because this was the ice house was fairly recently before you folks, or at least some of you, back in 2011, that was approved. As part of that approval process, there was very substantial drainage and environmental work, water quality upgrades all on the property. It went through a full CAM review. The whole site went through a full CAM review as well as special permit review at that time. It was approved. Those improvements were then made over 2011 and 2012 for the Sono Ice House to open. And now that it's, sorry, pop-ups on my screen here. And so we're not proposing any new drainage or parking or landscape. There's no new exterior changes proposed here. And the site is already well up to date. Mike Galante couldn't be here tonight. We do have Steve Sapola from his office. If you do have traffic questions, he can answer that. Otherwise, you will hear from Steve or Mike at the public hearing. Additionally, as I mentioned, Kevin Conroy, the owner of the property, one of the owners, is also here, and he can answer any site questions you have if you'd like to hear from him. And finally, like I mentioned before, Igor, the owner of Go Green, is also here, and he can tell you a little bit about the business if you'd like to hear. But again, I know that the agenda's long, and we don't need to be extra long-winded if you don't want to hear from us at this point. With that,
Blank,
that's it.
Since this has to go to, excuse me, public hearing, have you or do you intend to have a conversation with the residents of Village Creek to reassure them that there are no environmental concerns associated with this?
We had not planned on holding a meeting for them. We did send out a notice when the application was filed, as well as a notice went out this week for the public hearing, because the published notice for the public hearing, your staff has already had go out. So we've given them 2 notices. We've not heard anything back from anyone. Certainly if we heard back, we'd schedule a meeting, but we're also attempting to, this is a very sort of modest sized lease, and trying to keep the costs down as much as possible for the tenant, who's got to go through quite a number of hurdles to become operational. And if he was inland, you wouldn't have any of this.
Questions from the other commissioners? All right, if not, then we'll leave it to staff to work with you regarding a date for the public hearing.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is XX-20 SPR Route 7 in Maple LLC, 24 Berkeley Street, construction of a 5-unit, 4-story townhouse building. And this is also a preliminary review. Mr. Canal?
Mr. Chairman, there's actually 3 applications associated with this. So you can do D, E, and F all as one item. They're all the same.
That's fine. The second is a proposed change to the zoning map from AAA residence to CBD and D residential. And finally, proposed amendments to revise the central business district schedule for maximum height on Maple Street.
Good evening,
Thank
Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Craig Flaherty. I'll be representing the applicant tonight. I'm the senior engineer and principal with Redness and Mead, a land use consulting company with offices in Stamford and Wilton. Also joining the call tonight is the principal of Route 7 and Maple LLC, Paxton Knoll. You are familiar with the developer behind Waypoint. Also on the call, the architects from Phase Zero Design, Ron Gooden and Kyle Kaleva. And if needed, the landscape architect is available as well, Kate Throckmorton, as is my colleague, Vincent Hine, who did a lot of the engineering. I'm going to share my screen to our documents now and give you your initial overview of the application, and then we'll get on with the referral process. We're doing something hopefully you'll like. We're very excited about this new product, townhouse style living in downtown. I think developer feels as though this is really a pilot project for something he'd like to do more of. But it is really to put 5 stately, attractive townhomes on the corner of Maple Street and Berkeley Street. That orientation is right here. The large building to the right is the Berkeley with 129 units, 6 stories tall. Waypoint is across West Avenue here in the lower right of the screen. You can see the Route 7 highway just to the west of the site, and there it is on the corner of Maple and Berkeley. Provided a little bit of a history of the site in the narrative is Exhibit C of your application. If you hadn't had an opportunity to review the narrative, that would be maybe the 3 pages in the pile of paper you have you might want to look at. I always try to give you an overview of how we got here. So before Super 7, this was a D-residence zone. This particular lot is an amalgam of 3 different properties that existed at that time. All of these properties purchased by DOT through eminent domain. And you can see how Super 7 got built through this neighborhood back in 1966, 1967. And this was effectively excess right-of-way left over. It was never really made a part of the official right-of-way of Route 7. It was held by the DOT for decades until my client purchased it last year and is looking to kind of round out this block. When you look at the orientation of the neighborhood, you've got really a CBD zone site across the street, which is the old Norwalk Y. You've got the Berkeley, also a CBD zone. Of course, CBD zone goes up and down West Avenue. And this is just a little gap in what could be a very nice urban streetscape. But we also want to be sensitive to the D-residence zone, which extends north onto Berkeley Street. So here again is the zoning on the left from 1961, was in the D-residence zone. For many years, it was unzoned when it was made a part of the Route 7 right-of-way. And then there was a change to rezone the Route 7 right-of-way to AAA, which is still apparent on the zoning map today. This is where we fit in right here. basically pulling the CBD zone up Maple Street and leaving the D residence zone facing Lyons Place. And then this is the detail of the zone change map that shows that again. The CBD zone is proposed for the bulk of the lot on Maple Street to match the other corners of that intersection, and then D residence zone is done to match the neighborhood heading to the north. So in order to build these 5 townhomes, we need to get the property from the AAA zone into the CBD zone. We also need to make, we actually don't need to make one minor edit to the regulation, but I think staff wanted us to, and you'll see why in a second. We're going to limit the height for kind of transitional sites like this on Maple Street. You may recall or be familiar with your regulations in the CBD zone. The blanket allowance in the CBD zone is for a 6-story building that is 72 feet high. You then go through a number of exceptions to that blanket allowance where you might want to reduce height on certain streets like Commerce Street, Isaac Street, Wall Street. You've chosen to reduce height. And then other situations, you provide exception to increase height to spur commercial development on the 2nd and 3rd floors of a building. Here, instead of allowing the full 6 stories and 72 feet, staff was looking for a little bit of a regulator, a little bit of a governor on what could potentially be done here. And so the solution was to add height restriction for Maple Street at 4 stories and 45 feet. So we actually, in this situation, are making that baseline amendment a little more restrictive than it otherwise would be to, again, make this kind of a transitional site away from downtown. As is important when proposing a zone change and text amendment, we need to make sure that these actions are consistent with your new plan of conservation and development. And in the narrative, I've provided 2 quotes related to the plan of conservation and development. One is the desire to support housing policies that promote higher density housing near existing and future employment centers and availability of public transportation. And then to promote diverse housing types such as townhomes, condos, live-work units, and rental apartments in Norwalk's urban core at transit-oriented locations and in mixed-use clusters on major corridors through redevelopment. So we think this is very clearly accomplishes both of those things. I think Norwalk's, I'm not sure, but I imagine that Norwalk Hospital is one of the biggest employers in town, if not the biggest employers in town. And that, of course, is just a block away. So I would consider this site near a major employment center. There are also a number of bus routes that use both Maple Street and West Avenue while they're circulating in and around downtown. So it's transit oriented as well. So through that, we think it's consistent with your overall guidance in the plan. And ultimately, we think it's going to be really a very beautiful project. And again, we think hopefully a pilot project for more to come. The image you're looking at is slightly different than the one we provided with the application. We're toying with the tone of the brick. It's predominantly brick faced. And so this represents a slightly lighter version. The way the site plan orients is there will be 3 driveways. Sounds like a lot, but you'll see why in a second. Really a one-way only in off of Maple Street to serve units from the back. This driveway in the back will be all one way. So it'll go from Maple Street out to Lyons Place. And then there'll be a second courtyard drive in the front off of Berkeley Street. Right now, I think our intent is to actually have these 3 units feed their garages out to this drive court and come in and out off of Berkeley Street. And these 2 units actually use that back driveway. The entire All of the drive surfaces will be made of permeable pavers. Again, the pavers provide that high quality look that we're going for with these townhomes. And then the permeable large joints between them give us the drainage mitigation that we need. Of course, that's been referred out to DPW, and we're looking forward to their review. We trust it'll be fairly simple.
Mr. Flaherty, can you?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain why it is that this property has a Maple Street address rather than a Berkeley Street address?
It actually has a Berkeley. Oh no, what is it? It is 24 Berkeley Street. Is the address of the parcel currently?
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
That's fine. My concern was that if it was a Maple Street address, it might have some impact on the hospital's property, the old YMCA.
Oh yeah, across the street. Yeah, I mean the thought I think for that parcel, at least of all the folks I've talked to about it, is that it's highly likely that when it is redeveloped, it will be merged into one lot, and that'll have a West Avenue frontage, and they'll have all the rights that come with that West Avenue frontage.
All right. It's my understanding that this project needs to go to the Planning Commission.
Correct.
So once they have acted, Steve, am I correct, will then set a hearing date?
Yeah, so we're probably going to get it to planning in late September, maybe if we're lucky. And so then we'll get it back to you guys for what, October, Steve?
Okay.
Yeah, we probably can hit the first October meeting.
Is there a requirement here for amenity space? Does it apply to a project of this size?
We are required to have a recreation area, and that recreation area is created with rooftop decks that are each 150 square feet in size. So these are the floor plans of the townhouses. There'll be 4 levels. It's worth noting in the garage, there's room for 2 bike racks and an electric vehicle charging provision in each garage, and these nice rooftop decks up on the 4th level.
Okay.
These will be condominiums?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know if these are going to be for sale or for rent. I think we'll see what the market bears, you know, in 2 years after they're built.
All right. Are there any other questions from commission members? Anything more from staff?
Nope.
Okay. I mean, certainly the zoning change makes perfect sense. This is not AAA zone, and frankly, I'm not sure I understand why an expressway is a AAA zone. I'd also note, although Mr. Flaherty didn't mention it, is that right behind these units is part of the Norwalk River Valley Trail that eventually will, you know, starts at the beach and will run all the way up to Danbury. Yeah.
Yeah, we think that's a great amenity, being immediately adjacent to that. I mean, it's a really great site. It's immediately adjacent to that bike trail. It's immediately adjacent to downtown. It'll be nice to fill in this this vacant lot.
Right. Okay. If not, I think that concludes our business. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll see you soon.
Okay. All right. Steve, you want to give us an update on the East Norwalk DOD? I understand there was a public hearing last night.
Yes, we had the first of 2 scheduled public hearings last night. We had to reschedule it a couple times because of the tropical storm, and power was out, and internet was out, so we felt it was best to move it to make sure everybody that wanted to participate could participate. So we had the first one last night. I think there was about 40 people on the meeting, so you know, it was semi well attended. We have another one scheduled for Monday, the 24th. That'll be the second one, and then it's on to the Planning Committee of Council, who has to also hold a public hearing because it's an amendment to the Plan of Conservation and Development alongside the TOD plan. So that process is moving forward.
So the Planning Commission is holding 2 hearings. Are they also taking action on it?
Eventually, yeah. So it's a little quirky. Norwalk's the charter related to the POCD update doesn't jive 100% with the state statute for adoption. So we're going to actually hold an adoption hearing itself, which will be a 4th hearing at the end of September after Common Council acts. So then they'll take action at that point.
And at what point do we get it?
You'll get the zoning, we can start whenever you have a little free time on your agenda to look at it. I did put in, as we discussed at the last meeting, into the zoning regulations RFP, I wanted to carve out a little bit of money for the chosen consultant to take a second kind of peer review look at the parking standards and the amenity schedule within the zoning regulations that are proposed.
Okay. A status report on industrial zones?
Yeah, I'll be hopefully getting an email out to the group that's looking at that shortly. The consultant is working on some first thoughts on the presentation, and I've been exchanging emails with them the last couple of days. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll have our first real meeting.
Okay. And the zoning regulation, where does that stand?
The RFP went out yesterday. The responses are due back at the end of September, so we'll get those. I did have conversation with Corporation Counsel, and what we can do is we can have do the same kind of Zoom meeting and then go into executive session to, discuss the applicants for that, or the potential consultants, and then we can do the same thing when we do the actual interviews with that.
Okay, so we can act, the commission can act as a committee of the whole.
Correct. And also, I was going to ask you what your thoughts were about having additional staff members at least participate in those meetings and conversations. I'd like to get them involved as much as possible going forward, since they're going to be the ones actually using the regulations on a daily basis.
Do you want them involved throughout the process, including the hiring process?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you guys have the vote on that, and you'll be the ones choosing the consultant. I'd like to get their input, and but that's your call.
I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I don't have a problem with getting their input. I think their
Sounds good to me.
welcome.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I would actually enjoy that.
Okay, sounds good. We also have approval of the minutes. Unlike the last minutes we approved last week, we actually did receive the minute. I don't know how many of you, like me, trekked over to City Hall to pick up this package, because I prefer to have paper that I can look at when I'm reviewing these, rather than doing it on a screen. I think it has something to do with age, but they were included in that package. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? This is the meeting of August 12th.
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion by Michael. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay. Galen seconds. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Is there anyone?
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't here on the 12th. I was on vacation.
Okay, so it's approved with one abstention. Comments of director, Steve?
I just owe you and I owe Bob Griswatz an apology. I was for some reason, I thought that the North 7 application was on tonight's agenda, so I scrambled to have Bob at the meeting tonight, and then
Right.
about half an hour into the meeting, I realized it was not on the agenda, and I called him and said, sorry, go home.
I wondered why he disappeared.
Yeah, that was my mistake. I figured that
Okay.
out a little late.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, I've got a question for you. At our last meeting, we said we'd try to do something for Nate for September 3rd. Frank, you weren't at our last meeting, but Nate had to leave the commission because he had served 3 consecutive terms. And after serving 3 consecutive terms, you're required to go off the commission. Steve, you were going to contact the mayor's office to see if he might be available on the 3rd to say something.
I haven't done that yet. I'll do that tomorrow, first thing.
Okay, if you'll do that, the other thing we talked about is after the meeting on the 3rd, we'd stay in the Zoom meeting and maybe have a very brief cocktail party. I didn't think it made sense to do it before the meeting. Drinking alcohol seems to me is not best practice before a meeting. And we were going to perhaps order a bottle of Nate's favorite libation and have it delivered to his house. Michael, do you know what that is?
I will have to find out.
All right, find
Probably
out.
Scotch, if I had to guess.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because we have gone out a couple of times. I think it's maybe a clear liquid. Let me know. Nick has given me the name of a company that can actually make a delivery to his home. And we'll try and do that for the 3rd.
What about the cost? How do we do it? Through Venmo? Do we Venmo someone our pro rata share to?
Oh, no, it's inexpensive. I'll take care of that.
Thank
the
you.
only
Thank
other
you for your
thing-
generosity.
The only other thing we need is for Steve to have the certificate that retiring commissioners receive. We're not talking about a lot of time, but we're talking about a person who there's been a lot of value added to what this commission does as a result of his participation. And I think we owe it to him and even to ourselves to recognize what he's done for this city.
I agree. I mean,
Absolutely.
he's been there in the
100%.
clutch moments. He's
Right.
definitely been there for us, so. And he's been good.
Okay, finally, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Okay, Josh, motion,
Second.
Galen seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Great.
Good night, guys.
Have a
Take
good
care.
night.
Aye.
Bye.